take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? I'm a human being, god damn it! My life has value! It's time to ask yourself what you believe.
Mass murder, torture, perjury, embezzlement, fraud, deception, treason. These are just a few of your many crimes against humanity. You will not win this war, for you are fighting the very essence of humanity.
Hi, welcome to Truth or Talk. I'm April Bowden.
And I'm Virstyne Henry.
You can find us at truthertees.com and our store at shop.truthertees.com, where we have for purchase our Conspiracy Realist t-shirt. If you buy 3 t-shirts, you can get a free copy of the inspiration, Liam Sheff. He was the inspiration for our shirt, Conspiracy Realist, and we also have his book for purchase. If you buy 3 t-shirts, you can get a free copy of Liam's book, The Official Stories. So we hope that you take advantage of that while supplies last. That's at shop.truthertees.com. We are on all the social networking sites. Please send us any comments or questions. Facebook, Twitter feed.
Twitter feed?
Or you can hear at blog. Throw down a comment.
Also, we want to hear from you. We really like some feedback. We want to know how you're enjoying the show. If you're not enjoying the show, we're open. We want to know if there's anybody that you would like us to hunt down and interview for you. If there's any information that you would like to learn about or anything. We want to hear from you, the people. So you can write us individually you can write us first at mail@truther talk. Mail at truthertees.com, or you can write us individually, April at truthertalk or Virstyne at truthertalk. So,
yeah, that's it. And so that's how we can be reached. And today we're going to be talking to Stewart Rhodes, the founder of the Oath Keepers.
I'm a bit starstruck, April.
We're watching. Yeah, we're both a little starstruck. Sometimes I get a little starstruck with the guests that we have on, and this is definitely one of the people because he's an expert on the Constitution. And he went to Yale, he taught at Yale, and we'll mention that in his introduction, but it's pretty impressive, his background and everything that he knows. He's a very smart guy. So
he's really humble though too, really really chill.
Yeah, he's a chill guy. He's an incredibly intelligent person, but just a nice fellow and just a good salt-of-the-earth, upstanding person. Because these Oath Keepers, if you guys don't know, we'll ask him to explain it, but basically, it's a really important organization that I think everybody should look into. Because I'm not a big person. I'm not a person to support a lot of nonprofit organizations because a lot of them are actually not doing the right thing. But this group is, because they're Oath Keepers, which means that they are military and police who are vowing to keep their oath to the Constitution, which they all should be doing anyway. They shouldn't have to be told to do that. But that's, it's not quite their fault because we have these rogue elements in the government that are signing these executive orders and signing these laws, these things into law that aren't constitutional. Yeah. So they're making them, and they're making them carry out all these orders that aren't constitutional. So now they have to say, well, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, everybody should really know about the Constitution in detail, which, we're taught pieces of it in school, but we're not really taught why we have certain laws. And I didn't know, why we have the Second Amendment really until I became an adult, We just are taught maybe to memorize them little bits and pieces, but, and then it's made to be, excruciating and boring. Yeah. Like, you don't even want to history. History is made to be so painful in school that you don't even want to deal with it. So, honestly, as an adult, it's not to I've gotten into the Constitution and really realized how important it is. Also traveling around the world and looking at other countries and, really realizing how special it is. Yeah. Because I think you take things for granted. You know, being an American also, you know, you take things for granted. You go to other countries and see, you know, and now there are some countries too. I think, oh, you know, maybe we should do this in America. You know, they do some things this way, and that could be beneficial for us to do it this way in America. But for the most part, you know, we still have some of freedom of speech compared to a lot of other countries. We still have our guns, you know, which is like the big thing, the First and the Second Amendment. But, you know, they're trying to take that away as well, covertly. Right. You know.
Yeah, well, obviously we still have a First Amendment because we're able to do this show and talk about the things we're talking about.
I know, right?
So we clearly still have the freedom of speech, even though there have been efforts to take that away since it was given to us. It's been almost immediately been trying to take away. And we, you know, and that's why I always we did that show about words with Liam, and we kind of were tongue-in-cheek and funny about it. But the truth is that I don't generally support any sort of kind of infringement upon the First Amendment, even if it's, you know, stand-up comics saying things offensive, just because it's, you know, it either the right either exists or it doesn't. You know, if you start saying, well, you can say this, but you can't say that, or you can say that. I mean, it's just going to go down the line, and then next thing you know, they're going to be taking away your right to talk about things in politics. Well, you can only talk about this, you can only talk about that. Yeah. You know, and
put some tape over your mouth, and it's a done deal. You know what I mean? Like
exactly, and then you're right, and then it's just completely gone. And then if we don't have this, how are people going to wake up if we can't talk about what's going on? You know, what's going on in our environment, and pretty soon they're going to say, well, you can't talk about 9/11. You know, you can't talk about have an opinion about that. You can't have an opinion about the Constitution.
Yeah,
you know,
crazy. You know, in class actually, I was talking to my kids. We were talking about this a couple days ago, and we were going over some rules that we should have in the classroom to keep the classroom in order. So usually, you know, it's kind of like if I do it with the kids, it's an agreement. You know, okay, we're going to do this. This is going to be disruptive to the learning process. And this one girl was like, oh yeah, we shouldn't talk about religion. And I was like, oh, what do you mean? She's like, yeah, you know, if somebody wants to talk about how great Buddhism is, I don't want to hear about it. I'm like, well, you just leave the room.
Yeah, exactly.
Just walk away.
Right.
Like, you don't have to agree with them, you know, or you can say something back. You know, you have your right to you know, say what you don't like about certain religions, you know, as long as it, you know, in the environment of children, as long as you're not being offensive and name calling and hitting and stuff like that, you know. But still, I thought that was really interesting that she brought that up. So we just had a little conversation in the class about, like, you know, being able to say what you want to say and how, you know, you pull those, you put that on somebody, you know, eventually it's going to come back to you, you know.
Right.
You know, even as a black person, like, I don't like skinheads, but, you know, if they want to rally, you know, let them rally.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Right, exactly. You have to, I mean, it's as much as we find that just appalling and offensive that skinheads would rally, but if you start to infringe upon that and that they can have an opinion even though it's an ignorant one or a stupid one, but that's the whole point. I mean, you know, you have to kind of, freedom is freedom, and that means that you have to allow people to make bad choices sometimes and make mistakes. That's kind of what it is. And you sort of say, well, people aren't going to make the right decision. If we give people guns, let them have gun rights, then they're going to kill people because they're not going to make the right decision. Well, not all people are going to do that. Only a small few are going to do that.
Yeah, and when you like see how the policemen spray those kids in the face, and you see like Rodney King and things that have been caught on tape, where policemen have, and I'm not saying all policemen are like this, but there's some policemen that abuse their power. So you're safe with the policemen having the guns?
Right.
You're safe with them having guns like that? Really?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Remember Mateo Hawkup?
Oh, man. We trying to girl. Mateo Hawkup. Yes.
Mateo Hawkup, yeah. You guys, if you don't know who Mateo Hawkup is, go check him out on Facebook. Mateo Hawkup. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say. He's worth checking out. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, I'm not. I know it's tough out there because we do see all these abuses of power with police officers, and they do seem to have. I think it sort of goes along the line of the great sort of dumbing down effect of all of us, really, because, and and they're a reflection of it as well, because everybody's being dumbed down. Everyone's being indoctrinated into giving up their rights, and cops are being indoctrinated to believe that, that they have to carry out these orders and these laws and things, that they don't. And so that's why we're such big fans of Stewart Rhodes, because he's a historian, and he's written papers at Yale School. He went to Yale, and he's written some papers on the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and so he's an expert on all this stuff. So it's a little, intimidating because he's such a smarty. A little bit, but we always go for it. We always go for it anyway.
I want to say, as far as reaching out to the military and police, I really respect and admire what he's doing, because these are the people that really need to be reached out to, because they're the ones that have the guns. Like, I'm for gun rights, but I don't own a gun. So at the moment, so it's like if somebody wants to come and round me up, I would have to, I don't know, use a knife or like, I don't really have anything to fight back with. It's not going to be like a fair fight,
No, not
and
at all.
yeah, and these people are working for the establishment. They're supposed to be protecting us, and they've been conditioned to believe that they're not, that we're the enemy, but actually we're supposed to be working together,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're all we're all in this together. This rogue element, these like crazy people that we have running this country, running this world, they don't care about the police. They're just using them. The police and the military are just their little tools.
They're using us against us. Anything that we're having. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Saying, anything that we have fear about right now, like all of these, you do research about like some of the bioweapons and the chemtrails and the policemen. It's basically other people doing these things. Right. that are being pitted against the common population. So if you were to reach out to those people, like if nothing, we would be able to win, so to speak.
Yeah.
If there wouldn't be a war if nobody showed up.
Exactly.
People really. It's easier said than done. It's easy because literally that's all you just have to do. If the president's like go to war and you're just like, we don't agree. If
right.
we're just like, we're just gonna chill. We're not gonna die for you. You're not gonna get like shot at with injections and experimented on and
right.
Lose our limbs and kill other people, poor people in other countries for nothing, and then only return to be psychologically messed up. We're not going to do that.
Right.
Sorry. Then what are they going to do? What is Obama going to do? What is Obama going to like beat your butt? Like,
yeah.
I like to see Obama like he. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
With this Iran Syria conflict thing, it's getting pretty scary, and I hope enough people wake up to what's going on, because they can't really do anything without the consent of the police and military.
Yeah, exactly.
And people say that they have bad situations at police, or if they have a bad situation with policemen, they're like, all policemen are they suck. I'm like, no, they're like not all policemen. Even my dad, that has been abused by the police quite a few times. He's still just like, they're people. He goes, even though I've been abused and wrongly imprisoned by police, I've been experiences with policemen, and I have to tell myself that they're people just like anybody else.
Right.
So always remember that military people, God forbid that you do have a bad experience with them, but just also, keep that in mind that they're people just like you and I,
Yeah, exactly. So with that in mind, we're going to take a short break, and when we get back, we'll be talking to Stewart Rhodes. So thank you for listening. We are Truth or Talk. You can find our website at truthertees.com, our store, shop.truthertees.com. And we are going to take a short break, and when we'll be back, we'll be talking to Stewart Rhodes.
All right, yay. Okay.
Very exciting. Okay, see you in a minute.
Yes, hello. I wanted to say that I love the conspiracy realist t-shirts that you can get only online. It's shipped at truthertees.com. I knew a conspiracy when I saw it. America is run by the CIA. Yes, the CIA. That's why you have to wear a conspiracy realist t-shirt all the time to let people know that you are not stupid. Go to ship.truthortiz.com. Ship.truthortiz.com. Ship. Like to go shopping when you buy things at the grocery store. Truthortiz.com.
Welcome back to Truther Talk. And on today's show, we're talking to Stewart Rhodes. Stewart is the founder and president of Oath Keepers. He served as a U.S. Army paratrooper until disabled in rough terrain parachuting accident during a night jump. He's the former firearms instructor and former member of Representative Ron Paul's D.C. staff. Stewart graduated from Yale Law School in 2004, where his paper Solving the Puzzle of Enemy Combatant Status won Yale's Miller Prize for Best Paper on the Bill of Rights. He has assisted teaching U.S. military history at Yale, was a Yale research scholar, and is writing a book on the dangers of applying the laws of war to the American people. To read more about Stewart Rhodes and the Oath Keepers, you can check out his website, oathkeepers.org. Please welcome to the show, Stewart Rhodes. Hi, Stewart.
Hi, Stewart. How are you?
Doing fine, thank you.
Good.
Great. We're so honored to have you on the show. We always talk about the Oath Keepers and how important that is, and we're excited to have you on. And so just jumping off, in case our listeners don't know about the Oath Keepers and aren't familiar, can you please tell us how you came to found this organization and why it was so important, and just give us a brief definition of what it is.
Well, what it is an association of both current serving and also retired and veterans of military, police, and first responder services. So we have some active duty military, active duty cops, lots of veterans, and also some firefighters as well. And the whole point is to reach out to the guys with the guns and those who be given the orders that would be, in direct violation of the Constitution. We want to make sure we reach them, and if they stand down and refuse to be used as tools of oppression against the people, then no matter how bloodthirsty or corrupt the powers that be are, they can't do it without the cooperation of the military and police. And also the first responders. Increasingly we see firefighters being asked to spy on people and participate in violations of people's rights, and so that's where we include them as well. And the prime drive for this was during my time at law school back in 2001, 2, 3, and 4, right behind 9/11, I saw the very extreme and dangerous claims of power being put out by the Bush administration, and claims that the president as commander-in-chief during wartime could really be, basically a lucky dictator. And I saw that we were, unfortunately running out of time as far as not having any real barriers to government power. The corruption is pervasive in all three branches of the government. The oath-breaking is pervasive. Both the executive, legislative, and judicial branches of the federal government are pretty much in lockstep agreement that they can just do whatever they want. And so this is basically a way to throw a monkey wrench in the plans and buy more time for the liberty movement. I think given enough time, we would win. I think the last two election cycles and the runs for office by Congressman Paul have been a good indicator of what's possible. More and more Americans are waking up. But my concern is that we will run out of time before we can reach all of our countrymen and wake them up and teach them about the Constitution and the principles of liberty that they did not learn in public school. My concern is that there will be an economic collapse or some other manipulated event by the powers that be to shut down the freedom movement before it can really pick up enough steam to change things politically. And so that's kind of the whole point of Oath Keepers, is to buy more time.
Right. And you all follow, or you have the 10 orders that you will not follow, because there are, as we know, some of these executive orders are sort of counter to the Constitution, and the whole purpose is that the Oath Keepers will not violate orders that are unconstitutional. So can you tell us just a few of those?
Well, first of all, everyone who's ever been in the military or served in police forces has sworn an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And so they already have an obligation to disobey any order that's contrary to the Constitution. You cannot honor your oath while also obeying unlawful orders, and that includes ones that are unconstitutional. And so what we did, though, when we first started Oath Keepers, is issue a declaration of orders the top 10. This doesn't mean these are the only things that we're concerned about, but these are the ones we figured are the most egregious and would be most likely to lead to Americans having no choice but to fight another revolution. So they're kind of like our major tripwires. But I want to make it clear there's plenty of other things that are also unconstitutional. We don't list torture there, for example, but we would definitely oppose, the use of torture.
Right.
So number one is we will not obey orders to disarm the American people, and that's something that we saw as recently as during Hurricane Katrina. We had people being disarmed, not because they were looting or doing anything unlawful, but simply because they were trying to protect their own homes. And that was a big wake-up call for quite a few Americans. And that's number one on our list, not because it's more important than all the rest of our rights, but because it's what's most likely to lead to conflict. It's the cause of the American Revolution. The final spark was the attempted gun confiscation in Concord and Lexington. Although there are plenty of other causes, denial of jury trial, confiscation of property, warrantless searches, things like that. It was the attempt to confiscate guns that really pushed them over the line.
Right.
And number two, will not obey orders to conduct warrantless searches of the American people, such as the recent, an ongoing NSA spying on Americans without warrant. Mm-hmm. Number three, we will not obey orders to detain American citizens as unlawful enemy combatants or subject them to military tribunal. And this was the big wake-up call that I had when I was studying at Yale University. I studied the topic of enemy combatant status as applied to American citizens, and I could see that the Bush administration was making some pretty outrageous claims. And unfortunately, they were backed up by both the Fourth Circuit and the U.S. Supreme Court has upheld the detention of two U.S. citizens, one Jose Padilla and the other one Yasser Hamdi, both of them detained without a grand jury indictment, without jury trial, simply held by the military for 3 years each. And so that was actually the big wake-up call for me. I think it puts us on a collision course. I think it puts us on a collision course of having to choose between subjecting to tyranny or eventually having to fight another revolution. And so, to me, that's one of the more dangerous claim powers that we need to guard against. And so, we want the military and police to refuse to go along with such orders in case they're given. That way, we can buy more time. Because if they do attempt to go and round up people, just like if they were to go and attempt to round up people's guns, I think it would lead to fighting. I think there would be plenty of people in this country who would rebel, and it would just lead. They would feel like they had no choice but to fight back. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So I wanted to know. I hear people say, "Oh, the Constitution, it's outdated. It's not anything special," but it is special. It's something very special. So, could you tell us why it's so special?
Well, to me, the most important part of the Constitution is the Bill of Rights. It's kind of like, I consider it the crown jewel of Western civilization. And without the promise of the Bill of Rights, the Constitution never been ratified. And what the Constitution, and in particular the Bill of Rights, is meant to do is to prevent all of the abuses that the American colonists suffered that led them to fight a revolution. And you can look at the Bill of Rights, and it's a reflection of their experience. Everything that's listed there as being a prohibition against the government action are things that they experienced. They experienced warrantless searches. Those are the writs of assistance, where they could just, the customs agent could just come into your home and kick in the door and go search your home without a warrant from the judge, without any probable cause showing a particular crime being committed. So they experienced that. They experienced denial of jury trial. And I encourage people to go and read the Declaration of Independence and read the list of their grievances. It wasn't just taxation without representation. It was also, one of them was, as they said, he has, in many cases, denied us the benefit of trial by jury. So that was done by a statute back in their day. And so that's why we have the Fourth and Fifth Amendments to guarantee, and the Sixth Amendment to guarantee that you'll get a grand jury indictment, to guarantee a jury trial before you're held. So this is the problem, is that everything that they wanted to guard against in our Constitution, all of the structure, all of the limitations on the government power, the very basic concept that the government only has the powers granted, all of that is now being violated. So we are experiencing, once again, a long train of abuses that are violations of our natural rights, much like our forefathers faced. And, they rebelled. At first, they said, hey, our rights as Englishmen are being violated, our ancient rights as Englishmen. And the right of jury trial was one of those. But later, they said, it's not only a violation of our rights as Englishmen, it's also a violation of our natural rights. And that's an important point. For example, there was no Second Amendment back in April 19, 1775. They fought because they understood that they had a natural right of self-defense and self-preservation, and that includes the right to keep and bear arms that are necessary for that self-preservation. They also had the rich history of the English right to bear arms, which was not necessarily written down in the Constitution, but part of their culture. And so they fought back in combination of the natural rights, defense of the natural rights, but also the rights of Englishmen at first. And we're kind of in the same position. The Constitution is simply the imperfect, but better than anything else I've seen, chosen method of securing our natural rights. And what's happening now is both our natural rights and the Constitution, which is supposed to protect them, are being violated once again. So we're in that same situation. And so I think it's important to say, okay, throughout the cycle of human history, there's always been this conflict between tyranny and liberty, and we're part of that ongoing fight. We now are the guardians, not just of the Constitution, but of the very idea of human freedom. It's our turn to fight. And we're not the only ones. Of course, other people across the world are struggling too, but we're part of this eternal fight. And we need to see this in a long-term view. It's not about us. It's about our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren. That's what it's really about.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So with that in mind, when would you say the Constitution started to be butchered?
Well, unfortunately, it started in earnest almost right after it was signed. You had the Alien Sedition Acts almost, within a decade after the signing of the Constitution. You had the gross violation of the First Amendment, where you had newspaper editors being arrested simply for criticizing the president. So that was the very first gross violation, and it's a good lesson for us. The reaction to that violation by Jefferson and Madison is a good model for us to look at. What they did is they didn't go to the federal courts and ask them to overturn this because they knew the federal courts were packed with Federalists who would uphold it. Instead, they went to the legislature of the state and said, you have a duty and an obligation to declare this to be null and void and to interpose yourselves between this abuse by the federal government and your people. And they wrote the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions laying forth the principles of nullification. So I think it's a real important first lesson for people. I would encourage them to go read the Kentucky Resolution and go read what Jefferson said about resisting tyranny. It's the obligation of the state and the people themselves in their states to resist it at the local level, at the state level. And so, and today, the same thing is true. It's not just about going to federal court or going to the Congress or the president and asking them, pretty please, obey the Constitution. It's also a duty and obligation of your local sheriff, your county commissioners, your town council to nullify and declare it null and void and to protect you, and also your state legislature and your governor. So I encourage folks to really look at that. So that was the first real blatant example of a violation. But throughout our history, there have always been men in power. This is the nature of the beast. I think what it is a reflection of the fact that, who gravitates towards political power? Usually it's a sociopath. Who would want to go through the hassle? I mean, who else would want to go through the hassle of running for public office? They're either guys like Ron Paul who are very civic-minded and true statesmen, or usually they're sociopaths who just like power. And so that's the problem. So,
but, I'm glad you put it that way. That's
that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And so
that's the problem.
That is the problem. So it's and since we have an election coming up, I mean, how do we vote for sociopaths?
You can get sociopaths, right?
Right. So it's sort of it's. I mean, I think it turns a lot of people away from even the voting system, because people like us who say, well, you know, we care about the Constitution, but these people that get into power, even on a local level, we're seeing so many abuses. You know, we're seeing the forced medical procedures, anywhere from, you know, these egregious, like, vaccine mandates, or, you know, just the Fed coming in and sort of imposing drug laws that are not on a state level. So the state sovereignty thing is being kind of pushed aside for the Fed in a lot of ways. So, you know, it's hard. So how do you vote? What do you? I mean, I know that the Oath Keepers are nonpartisan, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
so
we don't. What that means is we don't endorse candidates.
Right.
And we have to do that because we're trying to reach out to the military, and they have some pretty strict rules of what they can and can't do in political associations. But I will say this: I would consider it a violation of my oath I took to defend the Constitution, if I were to vote for someone that I know is going to go violate the Constitution. Yeah. You know, in my mind, if you vote for an oath breaker, it makes you an oath breaker. Yeah. No, I haven't given any kind of, I don't tell people how to vote, right. But that's my personal opinion. I think that the problem we've had in this country, one of the big problems, is this whole lesser of two evils, crap that we're sold every election cycle. And people, if they fall prey to it, the Democrats use it to get Democrats in line, no matter how corrupt or evil their own candidate is. And look at Barack Obama. He's a murderer. Yeah. He's running around murdering people all over the world with predator drone strikes, including U.S. citizens. Yeah. But yet, Democrats will vote for him because they're afraid of Romney. And the same is true about Romney. Yeah. He said he would have signed the NDAA. He thinks that any American accused of being part of Al-Qaeda doesn't deserve a trial. He is in direct violation of the Constitution. Wow. And yet, Republicans will vote for him because they're afraid of Obama. So as long as we're willing to swallow a reduced dose of poison over and over again, we're going to continue to poison ourselves. So I think that the answer really is to stop coming from fear, stop giving into that kind of fear, and be principled about it and say, I will not vote for anyone who's going to violate the Constitution. I don't care what the outcome of the election is. Yeah. I'd rather know that I took no part and that I have a clear conscience, because really, does it make a difference whether it's Obama or Romney? Right. It doesn't matter in the big picture. No. Yeah. What counts most is your local. I would say focus on local. Who your sheriff is matters. Who your county commissioners are matter. Who's in your state legislature. That's more important than anything that happens in Washington, D.C. Until such time as one or the other of the two major parties are slapped into shape by losing election after election. Like I tell Republicans, what has to happen for the Republican Party is they have to get the message that until they run constitutionalists, they're going to lose over and over again. I'd rather see that than to see fake conservatives or fake constitutionalists running and winning because we're so afraid we vote for them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's very disheartening, the system. But you're right. That's the way I would handle it as well. And you talked a little bit about Hurricane Katrina, and I know that this was a big deal for a lot of the Oath Keepers because we saw I think the imposition of martial law kind of is a violation of the Constitution in and of itself. And so,
well, there wasn't strictly there was no martial law declaration. But they did act as though the Constitution was suspended. They went around house to house without warrant, and confined people to areas, and then confiscated firearms. So yeah, they behaved as if the Constitution was suspended.
But there were some people who joined Oath Keepers after that happened. Some people who were in the police and military because they didn't feel comfortable, sort of taking these orders. Isn't that true?
Well, I mean, that happened long before there was an Oath Keepers organization. I think it started in 2009, and that was back, 2005. Right. So, but there were some military and police who did not participate, who refused to go along with it, but not enough.
Right.
And so, certainly that was a big wake-up call. It scared a lot of people, especially among conservatives who, tend to be more sensitive to gun rights. They were scared by that. And so it's a good wake-up call for them. I mean, like I said before, the prime motivator for me starting Oath Keepers was really the detention of Yasser Hamdi and Jose Padilla, because I could see that the laws of war were being brought home. Katrina is just a good example of how, yes, this kind of stuff can happen here at home. You had active-duty military deployed to the streets of New Orleans. You had federalized police officers from all over the country. They were put into federal service and brought to New Orleans. So it's a really good example of what can happen. And so, it's a good wake-up call and a good example for people. So if someone says, oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist, this stuff will never happen, I can point to Katrina and say, look, this can happen.
It already did.
Right.
It already happened.
And the big message to the military is, look, guys, when you're used overseas, for the most part, the laws of war and the UCMJ is all you need. It's sufficient. But when you're used here at home against your fellow Americans, then you're running right up against our Bill of Rights and our Constitution. So you need to know it. Because if you don't know it, how are you going to obey it?
Yeah. Or defend yourself, right? Protect yourself.
Right. Or you're not going to know what the right thing is to do, and you won't be able to articulate why it's the right thing. So.
Right. And as a veteran, what do you think about all these involvements in? We have all these foreign involvements that we're not declaring war, but I mean essentially that's what's happening: drone strikes and attacks into Yemen and all these other places, and it's so. Just as a veteran and as an Oath Keeper, do you find these wars to be a violation?
Well, I think people are starting to wake up more and more to the problem of having the president starting conflicts on his own.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, when Bush was doing it, conservatives were okay with it. But now that Obama's doing it, now they're starting to pay attention. They don't like what he did in Libya. They don't like the way that his Secretary of Defense openly told the Senate, we may let you know what we're going to do, or we may not. We look to NATO and to the UN for authority. That's a big slap in the face to a lot of these conservatives.
Yeah.
And so it's becoming more blatant. So I think in some ways that's good. There is a serious problem. Anytime you deviate from the Constitution, it's a problem. And we haven't had a declared war since World War II. So, but I think it's becoming more and more blatant. Obama, is making it much easier in many ways to point this problem out, because he openly goes to the United Nations for authority and just totally ignores Congress. And he is basically acting as though he's president of the world and is going to the World Congress. So in some ways, I like the fact that he's being so blatant and so brazen. It helps me to wake people up.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like their hubris is going to be their downfall,
Yeah.
Right. And so, this has been a problem. This has been a bipartisan assault on our Constitution. It's been going on for decades. A big problem we've had has been the perpetual war footing since the Cold War. We really never stood down after World War II. Our professional military stayed huge, and it only grew. And so I think Eisenhower's warning about the military-industrial complex was very apt and still applies. And what they did is, after the Cold War wound down, they found another enemy. The enemy now is terrorism. And so, as you know, now we're in this perpetual war. It's going to last, forever, according to the neocons, and now according to the left. And this is the problem: is that both the neocons within the Republican administration, and now the, big national security Democrats within the Democratic side are all in agreement on this perpetual war against a tactic, against terrorism. And when you have that kind of perpetual war, in wartime, people tend to give up freedoms. In wartime, countries tend to set aside their own principles of due process. Like in America, we interned the Japanese Americans. Over 100,000 U.S. citizens were detained simply because of their race. And so you had those kind of gross violations in every period of wartime in American history. But usually you calm back down during peacetime. Some of the worst violations were by Lincoln in the Civil War. And then you had other violations by Woodrow Wilson in World War I. The Palmer raids and arrest and detention of people just for speaking out against the war, things like that. And then, of course, World War II with the detention of Japanese Americans. So you have this cycle of increased government power and an erosion of freedom during wartime that, usually calms back down during peacetime. This is the problem with perpetual war against terrorism, is there will be no calming period. It'll just keep on ramping up over and over again. and now it's turning domestic. This is the other big problem is that all of the national security power that's been put in place supposedly to fight against foreign threats, against Al-Qaeda, against radical Muslims, is now being swung inward on the general population, and especially on those of us in the freedom movement. And so increasingly the government is looking at us as the enemy, and they're planning for domestic operations. That's why you see the CIA building a new domestic headquarters in Denver for domestic operations. You have the NSA building a huge database data center out in Utah. And so, this is going to look at and say, okay, here's where we're going next. Is everything's been done overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan or Yemen or anyplace else is going to come home. That's their plan. That's why they want predator drones across our skies. That's why they always claim that they can do here in the United States exactly the same things they're doing overseas. There's no legal separation. There's no legal barrier between them doing here what they've done over there.
Wow. Jeez.
In their eyes. This is their argument. I think the Constitution does limit that. But the problem is that they're telling us over and over again that it doesn't. And they're putting the structure in place to do it here.
Right. Wow. So what are your thoughts on the Waco incident? Did you think that because that was on Americans, so it was just a group of people, and did you think that the Department of Homeland Security sort of overstepped their bounds there?
Well, there was no Department of Homeland Security back then.
Right. Well,
that was the FBI. But yeah, it's a good early example of the problem. It's been multiple problems. First of all, the local sheriff could have easily gone in there and done a search for weapons. He'd done it in the past. The local sheriff could have easily, Dr. Koresh, as he'd done in the past, and gone to see if he had any weapons in violation. The sheriff could have handled it, should have handled it. So that's one problem, is the feds coming in, ATF coming in, and they did this huge, basically a show for the cameras. Yes. This is their big money raid. They're going to show, their utility, because they're up for budget renewals. They want to make sure that everyone knew how important they were. Right. And so they did this huge raid, and they went and trained at Fort Hood ahead of time. So they trained in military tactics. This is the other problem, is militarization of our police. So they came in using heavy-handed military tactics in this brutal assault. One of the first things they did is they shot the dogs. They shot all their dogs. So they're opening fire, killing their dogs, and they're surprised that someone shot back, And then they unloaded. We don't even really know who fired the first shot, as far as towards each other. We still to this day don't know if the first shots were fired into the house or out of the house, because they destroyed all the evidence afterwards. All we know is a gunfight erupted, and they had no problem at all with spraying this homestead church they knew had women and children in it, full of bullet holes. I mean, this is the problem, is they apply military tactics and military force, military style rules of engagement to American civilians. And so, and of course, the outcome led to the burning death of about 100 American citizens. At least 25 of them were children.
Oh,
so, pretty horrible.
Yes. So
and that sparked the militia movement. That in combination with the Ruby Ridge incident sparked the militia movement. And because people looked at that and said, okay, they're now starting to take the gloves off and kill us. And so many Americans were so outraged over it and so fearful over it, they felt the need to band together for mutual defense.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the Ruby Ridge incident, to this day, I don't exactly know why they went in and attacked those people. I mean, it was sort of a standoff, but it still eludes me as to how they came to the conclusion that they had to kill everybody. It was very tragic.
Which one?
The Ruby Ridge incident?
So Ruby Ridge, it started out with Randy Weaver being tricked by a government informant to saw off a shotgun. And they were doing that to entrap him, because they wanted him to spy on, I think it was an Aryan Nation group in the next valley over. They wanted to coerce him into being their little mole. And he refused to do it. And that's when they charged him with the violation, sawing off a shotgun. And then he refused to show up for court and stayed on his property. And then they sent out a U.S. Marshal team to go up there and surveil them. Well, the U.S. Marshal team was hiding in the bushes, watching their cabin when Weaver's son Sam Weaver and his friend, an adult friend of theirs, was out walking their dog, and the dog alerted and barked at these people in the bushes, and then they shot the dog. This is, once again, just like their modus operandi. They opened up and shooting the dog, and here, they don't know who these people are, so they return fire. One of the marshals was killed. The 15-year-old boy, Sammy Weaver, went running towards the cabin, and he was shot in the back and killed. Later on, the adult male friend of the Weaver family was put on trial for murder, but was found not guilty by a jury because they ruled it was self-defense. Yeah. For the pretty basic reason that he didn't know who these people were shooting at him from out of the bushes, and so he fired back.
Of course.
And his attorney, one of his attorneys was Jerry Spence, the very famous trial lawyer, who also defended Randy Weaver against murder charges, and he was acquitted as well because he had nothing to do with the firefight. He was up in the cabin. That's how the siege got started. And then during the standoff, the FBI showed up with their hostage rescue team, and during that standoff, one of their snipers, using military rules of engagement, shoot-on-sight orders, which were unlawful, fired at Randy Weaver while he was running back to the cabin and shot Weaver's wife. Now, whether he did it intentionally or accidentally, the point is he was just opening fire on anybody that moved. And so, once again, you have really bad rules of engagement being used. And so that was a huge wake-up call, too. It's like, look, guys, this could happen to anyone's family. I don't care if because Randy Weaver was, demonized as he was a white separatist, but that's got nothing to do with it. It could happen to me, it could happen to you, it could happen to anybody. We're going to use these kind of rules of engagement.
Right. And so what did Oath Keepers, people who are active police and military, do they ever receive backlash from their supervisors or things for not obeying certain orders?
Well, many people who've been in the military or police, long before there was an Oath Keepers organization, have already experienced situations where they received orders they thought were unlawful. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, it usually goes down where they say, look, sir, here's the reasons why this order is problematic. And as long as they've got their ducks in a row, usually the officer goes, oh, okay, I understand what you're saying. And we have plenty of guys who've had that experience. So whether they're NCOs or officers. There have been others who have had to go to court-martial and who have beaten it. There have been others who did not beat it, unfortunately. Guys like Michael New, who was court-martial for refusing to wear a green beret, or a blue beret, and serve under UN command. He did not get a fair trial. He was not allowed to present evidence of the unlawfulness of the order. It was kind of a kangaroo court. And so there've been, it's been mixed. It's been a mixed bag. Sometimes good results, other times bad results. But that's the nature of the beast. When you raise your right hand and swear that oath, you have to understand that you could wind up being prosecuted for failure to disobey an order. And this is the thing. Like, I went on a show once with Bill O'Reilly, and it's like, oh, it's going to lead to chaos. And you're asking the military guys to make their own decisions about what order to lawful or not. It's going to lead to chaos in the ranks.
All right.
And what's silly about that is, look, this has been an obligation that's been there from the very beginning. It's been used, for 200 years. You've had men who have questioned orders being given and have done this within their commands. But the second point why it's so ridiculous is that you're not going to do it for trivial reasons. You're only going to do it when you are convinced the order is unlawful. And the third reason why it's ridiculous is that you have an obligation to disobey unlawful orders. And if you obey an unlawful order, you could be tried for that. Mm-hmm. Like Lieutenant Cowley is a good example for the My Lai massacre during the Vietnam War. This officer defended himself in his prosecution for shooting women and children. He would defend himself by saying, well, these were orders I was given. I was just following orders. Well, that's an invalid defense. And so a person in the military is kind of between a rock and a hard place. They can be tried and convicted if they obey an illegal order, and they can also be tried and convicted if they disobey a lawful order. And so they're going to be very careful about whether the order is lawful or not. They're not going to do it for trivial reasons. But when it's important, they need to stand up and do the right thing.
Well, yeah, I'm just curious, how is it legal to pass all of these laws that our government has been passing, like these executive orders, without the conscious knowledge of the public? For example, the Obama administration passing the NDAA, What are your thoughts on executive orders like that?
That wasn't an executive order. You found a law. The National Defense Authorization Act is a law.
Okay.
It's a yearly budget renewal for the U.S. military. What they did is they stuck within it these provisions, Section 1021 and 1022, which authorize military trial, military detention of U.S. citizens. So it was a law. But yes, I mean, whether it's a law like that is still unconstitutional. Problem is we have all three branches now who are saying it's okay. You've got the president, both Bush and Obama, saying they have the power to detain American citizens, or even just kill you. Obama's begun to do that. You had the courts back them up. The Fourth Circuit backed Bush up all the way. The Supreme Court of the United States in 2004, in a case called Hamdi versus Rumsfeld, that was the detention of Yasser Hamdi, an American citizen. In that case, unfortunately, the Supreme Court also backed that up and said nothing in the Constitution bars the U.S. government from detaining one of its own citizens as an unlawful combatant, which is totally unconstitutional in violation of the Treason Clause. Article 3, Section 3 of the Treason Clause is very clear on what must be done with an American accused of making war against his own country or aiding the enemy. It requires a trial for treason. So there you have the executive branch and the judiciary branch both agreeing, and now with the NDAA, Congress is agreeing. So now you have all three branches saying that your citizenship's irrelevant. We can do exactly the same thing to you that we do overseas in Iraq or Afghanistan. So this is the problem. And this is why I'm focusing on the guys with the guns and the military and police. I know that all three branches of the federal government, with very few exceptions, are corrupt and embrace this illegitimate power. Both Republicans and Democrats. You had John McCain on the right and Carl Levin on the left, both coming together and joining hands and writing the detention provisions in the NDAA. And it was a bipartisan passage through Congress, overwhelmingly passed. So this is, we're in a bad place. We're in a place where the political elites, the legal elites within Washington, D.C. are in agreement, both left and right, that they can do whatever they want to the American people. So we have to show them they're wrong, and the way to do that, I think, is first and foremost to have the military and police refuse to go along, and for the rest of us also to refuse to submit to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah. So, I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on gun control laws? And do you believe that by restricting the rights of gun ownership, this makes the public more safe?
Are you kidding?
I know. I'm just trying to get you to talk about it. I know. I'm just trying to get you to talk about it. That's all. I want you to go into detail about that.
What do you think?
Well, no, I mean, I guess before, it's
I don't believe that, but yeah.
It's basic human rights. You have a right to self-defense, self-preservation. You have a right to be able to defend yourself. Like you as a woman have a right to be able to defend yourself against a rapist or a murderer. You shouldn't have to be stronger than the person attacking you physically to be able to do that. A weapon is a tool to help you preserve your life. And that goes for private crime, but also goes for you preserving your life against government crime, against government abuse. I mean, mass murder by governments in the 20th century far outstripped anything any private person could ever do to you. You had, 70 million people killed by their own governments, at a conservative estimate. Maybe it's even more than that. I think it's more like 120 million people killed in the 20th century by their own governments. So the founders understood that, first of all, it's a natural right. Second of all, this is an important point about the Second Amendment, it's not just about your right to have a pistol in your pocket or your purse against private criminals, against murderers and rapists and serial killers. It's not just for that. The Second Amendment is really about the military power being in the hands of the people. We're supposed to be, the military force is supposed to be predominantly in the hands of the citizens' militia, which is made up of we the people. I encourage folks to go look up articles by Dr. Edwin Vieira on this topic about the importance of the militia. And Dr. Vieira points out that when the Second Amendment says that it's necessary for the security of a free state, that's the only place in the Constitution where the word necessary is used. The militia, the people being armed, and formed into militias is necessary for the security of a free state. You won't be secure and you won't be free if you give up that military power. And unfortunately we have. We don't have organized militias in the states. And instead we rely on this massive standing army. And so the founders' design was, if you look at Article 1, Section 8, it says Congress has the power to call forth the militia, to provide for calling forth the militia, to suppress insurrections, to repel invasions, and to execute the laws of the Union. So it's supposed to be the militia, which is us, used internally, not the standing army. This is their answer to that ancient question of who should guard the guardians. If you're your own guardians, you can't be oppressed using yourselves. They can oppress you with a standing professional army, and the founders experienced that. That's why they did not trust standing armies. They thought they were dangerous to freedom. And so they wanted to rely predominantly for domestic defense on the militia system. So I think we need to revitalize that concept. We should have strong state militias that can take care of any kind of security during an emergency. It shouldn't be the NORTHCOM and FEMA and federal troops coming in to handle things during an emergency. It should be you and your neighbors taking care of it in your local communities.
I'm also curious. My mom and I got to let's say, call it a tiff last night about the TSA, and what do you say to people who think the TSA are there to protect them?
You mean like the one where the guy searched people's coffees after they had bought Starbucks coffee inside the airport? That's not being done to protect you. That's being done to condition you.
Right.
Yeah, no.
And whether it's being done through I think a lot of it's intentional from the top down as far as conditioning goes, but it's also just the reflection of power. Once again, who gravitates towards those positions? It tends to be people who don't care about other people's rights, or who get off on wording it over people. He's going to show you his authority. He can make you do this. He can make you do that. Right. So no, I don't think so. And I think that who's traveled recently knows how disgusting it is to have the Orwellian choice between put through this ridiculous scanner, which many people think cause cancer, or which shows naked images of you, or being given the choice of being groped. I always opt to be groped. I'd rather be groped than scanned. But it's a pretty sick choice. And does it really stop anything? No. A terrorist is always going to find a way to. He'll navigate whatever the terrain is, whatever the security terrain is, and limitations he has to work within. He'll find a way. So I think it's illusory. I think it's an illusory giving up of your freedom for security.
Definitely. So I'm just curious. You do a lot of work. So how can the common person reach out to the police and the military? To help you guys,
I think
things we can
do. I think the first, what's my advice as far as reaching out to them?
Yeah.
Well, one thing we're doing right now is putting up billboards outside of major bases. We're starting with Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. That'll be up on the 10th. It should be up this next Monday. And so we're putting up billboards. Folks can do that. We had a gentleman down in Florida who went ahead and put one up already. He did an electronic billboard. He paid for it himself, and just encouraging the troops to defend the Constitution. And the one he put up said, "Honor your oath. NDAA is treason. Refuse to detain American citizens." And we provided him with all the artwork. So that's one thing you can do. If you in your local community, if you have a base near you, if you want to go and find a billboard, if you can raise the money to go ahead and get it. Or help us. We have some money set aside for billboards now, and help us find a billboard outside of the base and help us put a billboard up. So that's one, really, I think, effective way of doing it. Other ways, though, in person. You can go and hand out Oath Keeper DVDs or brochures outside of military bases. You can hand out pocket constitutions. Any books you think are, Bastiat's, the law, just really anything you think is going to be effective at reaching these guys, go hand it out to them. Print up articles and hand them out. So, but, my general advice is to walk up to them and say, hey, thank you for your service. I always appreciate that. I want to thank you for honoring your oath, and here's some material about other guys like you. Here's some stuff from Oath Keepers, or here's a DVD to watch. Check this out and give it to them.
Right.
They might read it, they might not, but, you know, for every 10 you talk to, 2 or 3 are going to go look at it. So that's my advice on that.
Yeah.
Be nice to them. I wouldn't walk up and go, "You're part of an oppressive government that's been violating our rights." I can help you.
Yeah, but nobody has the listening for you know, if you're going to be aggressive toward them. So with anything.
Yeah, you know, you want to always. I look at it like this. I presume the best. I presume they're an oath keeper at heart, and I treat them like that. And oftentimes, people will become what you treat them like.
Yeah.
If you treat them as though they're a person with honor and integrity, they're more likely to act like a person with honor and integrity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good advice, actually. I would agree with that. And it's so what did you think about the whole Occupy Wall Street thing? Did you feel that how did you think that was handled?
Handled by which side?
I mean, by both sides, really, because I think what you're describing, you could say that both sides kind of had some overstepping of the bounds, because some of the protesters were like that, were sort of screaming at the cops and yelling at them, and then and then some of the cops sort of overstepped their bounds as well. So, I mean, that's my opinion, but I wanted to know what your opinion was.
Oh no, they did. And look at the one of the most blatant examples was the police officer walking back and forth and spraying pepper spray in the faces of the students. I think it was Oakland. You know?
Oh yeah.
That was obviously excessive force. Yeah. So there was a lot of that going on, and this is the problem: is the police in this country have been gradually conditioned to see themselves as separate and above the people, and they're not taught sufficiently, you know, the First Amendment or basic principles of our rights. And so this is a problem. And not all cops are like that. Not all cops will do that. I know plenty of good ones, but there are also plenty of bad ones out there who will do that kind of stuff and do that kind of stuff every day. So that's the culture. And this is. I mean, obviously, if you have an unconstitutional government and it goes right down to the local level, as you said before, the corruption and the willful disregard of the Constitution goes down at a very local level. So the police are going to be a reflection of that, you know.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to fight that. Because look at it like this: it's kind of the same with the men in the military. There's still honor and courage in the ranks. It's just that they have a lack of knowledge. Quite a few of them just don't even understand what's right and wrong because they're not taught the Constitution in public schools. And so they're told that their job is to obey orders. They're told that what they're doing is perfectly legal. They're told all these things, and they believe it. And so even if they have the best of intentions, they're still going along with unconstitutional orders. And so the way to cure that is not to yell at them and scream at them and call them, you know, fascist. The way to cure that is teach them what's right and wrong.
Yeah.
Then, if once they know what's right and wrong, they still do the wrong, then you can call them a fascist. But, you know, I don't think it's productive to yell and scream at them when they don't know what's right and wrong. You know, cure their ignorance. And the same goes for the Occupy people, frankly. You know, a lot of them, you know, I watched some of the interviews that were done by Adam Kokesh, some of the interviews done by Peter Schiff on the street. And a lot of the Occupy kids are a reflection of their college education. They're running around spouting Marxist nonsense, you know, as a solution. They're right about the corruption of Wall Street. They're right that Wall Street really is fascist. It's a marriage of big government and big business. They're correct about that. But their solutions are all out of whack, too. You know, solutions would lead to more government control, you know.
Right.
So that's the problem. Is the same thing there. The answer is not to yell at them and call them dirty hippie communists. The answer is to cure their ignorance.
Right.
You know, there's a big difference between, just like there's a big difference between the political elites who are sociopaths you cannot possibly reach, and the rank and file military and police. There's also a big difference between the average Occupy protester and some of the organizers. The organizers might be like dyed-in-the-wool Marxists that you're never going to be able to reach. But the average protester is a young college kid who is fed up with the prospects of having no job after 4 years of college and is afraid for his future. That's not an ideological Marxist. That's just a guy who's confused and angry. So they're reachable. So that's my general way of handling that too, is don't throw them all out. Don't assume they're all your enemy and unreachable. You know, go talk to the rank and file on the streets, both the cops and the protesters.
Yeah. So one of the things that I found very inspiring about the Oath Keepers was I saw this video from a former, I guess he was military during the fall of the Berlin Wall, and that was one of the ways that the people kind of, because they, well, why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, you're talking about Günther Spence. He was an East German lieutenant colonel in East Germany back in the 80s. When the wall fell in 1989, he was there. He was part of the active duty military. And he talks in an interview that's on our website about how when there were these massive street protests, peaceful protests in the streets demanding that the wall come down and Germany be reunited. And the Communist Party finally, ordered the military to go and crush the protests and stop the protests. And the military, the East German army, refused. The East German army general in command of the army said, nope, we're just going to stay on base. We'll take no part in it. You're on your own. And without the support of the military, the Communist Party of East Germany was finished. They were done. They couldn't do anything. And the Secret Service, the Secret Police, the Stasi, were hiding and running around, tearing off their insignia. Before, they had been kind of like the TSA agents in the airport, walking around strutting their power. But now, without the support of the military, they were naked. They were vulnerable, and they were vastly outnumbered by the people. And so they all ran and hid. Many of them were arrested and then charged with crimes. So that was a very peaceful, that's a very good example of a peaceful revolution, where you had enough of a shifting in the consciousness of the people, like 80 to 90% of East Germans were sick and tired of communism, including within the military. They were sick of it too. And so when that kind of a consciousness shift happens, then that's possible. You can get that kind of a mass stand down by the military. And that's one of our goals, is we want to reach enough of them so that's possible here. We'd like it to be a situation where if a president, whether it's Obama or Romney or whoever, were to attempt to declare martial law and suspend the Constitution and crack down on peaceful protesters, for example, we'd like to see the U.S. military say, hey, bud, you're on your own. You go arrest them. You and your cronies, you go do it. And so that's what we want to see. It's a really good example of what's possible. Because, look, if East Germans who had been raised first under Nazism and then communism, if East Germans can figure out the right thing to do, then so can Americans.
And also, wasn't there an incident like a few months ago where German police, I think it was Germany too, they took off their helmets and they marched with the protesters? Was that in Germany? Not too long ago.
No, I can't remember. That's happened in several places, actually. Yes. I think it might have been in Germany. I'm not sure though. But yeah, that's happened in several places.
Yeah.
So, we're in interesting times with the backlash. This is why I think, in some ways, Occupy Wall Street was good, because there's now a backlash against the ruling economic elites. The big banks and the international bankers who tend to pull the strings behind the scenes are now being exposed. And the Federal Reserve in this country in particular is being exposed. So are all the other central banks. The counterparts across the world, people in those countries are looking at them and going, hey, this is illegitimate. All you are is a bunch of leeches. You're just manipulating our money supply and stealing from us, robbing from us. The question is what will they replace it with? That's the problem. Is like I said, quite often they turn to Marxist solutions, which just lead to the same kind of problems down the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
So trying to get them to understand that and choose freedom is sometimes hard.
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you so much for your time. I think we're just about out of time here with the interview, but I really appreciate you coming on and telling us all about this. This has been a very good learning experience for me.
Very educational, also very inspiring.
And, as we told you before we started the interview, both Virstyne and I are just such big fans of yours and the Oath Keepers. We've been following your work for a while and really appreciate what you guys are doing and think that this is very important. So we hope everybody goes and checks out the website, which is at oathkeepers.org.
Yeah, oathkeepers.org. And one thing I want to say is that if folks want to help us, you don't have to be prior service to join as an associate. You can join as an associate member even if you've never served in the military or police, and you can just help us with our mission. So we invite you to come help us out.
Right. So we want people to learn about the Oath Keepers and then learn about them, and then once you learn about them, you'll want to join. And
well, whether you do it or not, though, you can certainly help by there's things on our website or brochures and flyers you can print up and pass out, and just talk to folks about what we're doing and pass on the message, keeping the oath.
Well, we'll certainly do that, and we thank you so much for your time and being on the show.
Thank you, Stewart, so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. So we are Truth or Talk. We're going to take a short break, and when we get back, we will close out the show, but we want to say goodbye to our friend Stewart Rhodes and thank him again. Oathkeepers.org is where you can learn about the Oath Keepers. All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. We now stand 10 years past the midpoint of a century that has witnessed 4 major wars among great nations. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
Okay, hi.
Yes, hello. I wanted to say that I love the conspiracy realist t-shirts that you can get only online at ship.truthortease.com. I knew a conspiracy when I saw it. America is run by the CIA. Yes, the CIA. That's why you have to wear a conspiracy realist t-shirt all the time to let people know that you are not stupid. Go to ship.truthortease.com. Ship.truthortease.com. Ship, like to go shopping when you buy things at the grocery store. Truthortease.com.
The Fact or Follow-Up segment tonight. Last night we interviewed Mark Potak from the Southern Poverty Law Center, and he spotlighted a right-wing group called the Oath Keepers that he feels may become dangerous.
But the reality about the group is that what it's really about is the fear that martial law is about to be imposed, that Americans are about to be herded into concentration camps, that foreign troops are going to be put down on American soil.
Joining us now from Washington, Stewart Rhodes, the founder of the Oath Keepers, who served as a paratrooper in the Army. Tell us about your group, first of all, before we get into the ideology of it. How many people are in the Oath Keepers, and do you have to be a police officer, a law enforcement officer, and an ex-military, or what do you have to be?
Well, if you're going to be a full member, you have to be either current service or prior service, military, police, or firefighters. But we also let average citizens come in as associate members to support our mission. And we have about 15,000 on our forum. about 15,000 on our forums. They're not all actual members, about 6,000 dues-paying members.
Okay, how much is the dues to get in there?
Just a $30 donation. This covers the cost of processing the paperwork. You bet.
And you started this about a year ago. Are you associated with the Tea Party at any level?
Well, I've been to a lot of Tea Party events. We've spoken at quite a few of them, and I'm on the planning committee for the one on 9/11 this next September, so the marchondc.org. But, you know, we like the Tea Party movement. I think it's great. It's a good revitalization of core Americanism and core constitutionalism. Okay, so full members in the Oath Keepers have to have a military or police background. Now, I'm going to read you something from your website. Firefighters.
Or firefighters. We will not obey unconstitutional and thus illegal and immoral orders, such as orders to disarm the American people or place them under martial law. Well, who's going to try to disarm people and place them under martial law? I mean, why would that even be something you would be discussing?
Well, it happened as recently as Katrina. You probably have seen the videos there of an old lady being tackled in her kitchen and disarmed with her revolver, and there was house-to-house searches for firearms, and you had the police chief declaring that no one would be allowed to have weapons, we're going to take all the guns, and they did. So they disarmed Americans over some bad weather, as though the bad weather suspended the Second Amendment. So that's the most recent example.
All right, but it was a little bit more than that. I mean, the local authorities in New Orleans could not control what was going on in the city, and you had looters who were armed going in and stealing things, and this directive was...
It wasn't just looters they were disarming. They disarmed average American people, just average American citizens.
No, they had disarmed everybody. They basically said, there's not going to be any guns in the city, and we're going to take them all because we're in a state of emergency. But that's after a hurricane wipes out the city, so I'm not sure. But let me ask you this.
Where's that in the Constitution that says that bad weather suspends the Constitution?
It's not a matter of bad weather. It's a matter of can't control the city. If a mayor of a city or a governor of a state has a state of emergency, all right? And you hear that all the time. We're going to put a state of emergency here. And we have a city that's out of control like we had in the 60s, and you remember some of those riots, I'm sure. And they say, you know, we're going to impose a curfew. You can't go out after 11 o'clock. You can't have a gun out in public. You can't do this. You can't assemble. And, you know, because we have a out-of-control situation. You're telling me that you're going to tell your people not to obey those laws?
I would say that disarming an average law-abiding citizen blanket like that.
No state of emergency. Now, I'm just saying, I'm just talking state of emergency.
Okay, so you call it state of emergency. Call it what you want. It's still unconstitutional.
That's a pretty extreme position. All right, let me ask you about this. You also say we are in a battle for the hearts and minds of our troops. What does that mean?
That means that there is a thought in the minds of some in the military that their oath is just to the president, and they don't understand that their oath is first and foremost to the Constitution. And so we have to make sure they understand that. Because unlike Nazi Germany, where, I mean,
the commander-in-chief
in Germany, the oath is to the president.
All right, listen. Commander-in-chief is the president by our Constitution. If he issues an order, are you telling people not to obey the order if they don't like it?
If it's unconstitutional, yes. The
in
oath
whose
is
opinion? The individual soldier? So each soldier makes up his mind whether the order he's given is constitutional or not?
What were the Nazis told at Nuremberg? That disobeying orders was no excuse, no defense. They have an individual obligation, and this is well established in military law.
Okay.
There's an individual obligation.
I know military law, and there are things in there that if a guy says you have to kill those civilians, you say no, we don't. But I'm saying in a general term, I don't think you can have a military or a police force if you have each officer and soldier and Marine saying, we'll obey what order we want because we don't think it's constitutional. That seems to be what you're putting out there. I'll give you the last word on it.
No, here's the thing, Bill, is that there's a presumption that orders are lawful. And so it's a heavy burden to meet. But if you obey an unlawful order, you can also be in trouble. And so they're not going to just go do this lightly. They'll do it when it's most serious, because there is serious repercussions if you disobey a lawful order. But you can be tried and convicted for obeying an unlawful one, too.
If it's clearly unlawful, I got it. But if it's a matter of interpretation, and you could have anarchy easily. But Mr. Rhodes, we appreciate you.
No, you'll have guys who'll be at risk of court-martial. They're not going to do that because they're at risk of court-martial.
All right.
They'll only do it.
I was on holiday with Sir Laurence Olivier. We had decided that 9/11 was an intelligence operation. We'd all known about JFK. He had so many mistresses. The CIA shot him. Castro could never have done it. was clear. We had become realists, conspiracy realists. How would we let everyone know was the question. We decided to buy T-shirts that told the contents of our hearts and minds to the world. We went to shop.truthertees.com. Even though the internet hadn't been invented at the time, we went to shop.truthertees.com. There we purchased Conspiracy Realist T-shirts, one of a kind, sold only at shop.truthertees.com. 100% cotton in men's and women's fitted sizes. I won't tell you which one I'm wearing.
Hi, welcome back. You're listening to Truth or Talk. Thank you for listening. You can find our website at truthertees.com, our store at shop.truthertees.com. We have a T-shirt available for purchase, Conspiracy Realist. You buy 3 shirts, you get a free copy of Liam Sheff, or an inspiration, Liam Sheff, his book, The Official Stories. So, hey, Virstyne.
Hey, how are you? We're back. We just finished. I feel like I got moded on that gun question. He was like, are you kidding me? I was like, oh my God, I got moded by Stewart Rhodes. But you know, a lot of times too, we ask questions, and a lot of the questions we do know the answers to.
Right.
We're just trying to get a person to talk about it. Because, you know, I was talking about that question. I was thinking about the people that are like, oh, well, guns are bad, and, you know, there should be no guns, and everybody, they should take all the guns away from the citizens, you know. And we talked about a little bit in the intro. It's like, well, do you want the people that are corrupt and psychotic to own the guns too? Just give them all the guns, and just we're cool. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
We have nothing. If you have spoons, we'll fight back with spoons.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all we'll have is spoons and, like, you know, more.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of an all or nothing sort of thing. It's like either there are none, that they just don't even exist, period, or, you know, everybody gets to own one, because it's just, you can't, if you're in a free society, I mean, you have to be able to defend yourself. They have a gun, but I don't. I can't, or I don't own a gun, but I believe in gun rights, you know, and the Second Amendment. But I'll admit that I didn't always understand it. You know, when I was brought up, I grew up in San Francisco. It was a very liberal city and very pro kind of socialistic sort of leanings. I would say not even democratic leanings. I mean, it is a democratic city, but even more so, it's like goes into sort of socialist, anarchist sort of leanings. And they're very much against guns. You know, that's a city that you'll find most of the people in that city would, if you were to take a poll, I don't know this for certain, but I would have a feeling that if you were to take a poll, that most of the people around there would say that they were in favor of gun control. And that does tend to be more the left than the right. They're more on the Republican side. They tend to be in favor of people being able to own guns. But the thing is that what Stewart Rhodes talks about and how important the Bill of Rights is and the Constitution is that, you know, they didn't just sort of give us these rights for no reason. It was like they were under these pressures themselves. And so they said, okay, well, you know, we're going to need these because someday, you know, we might have to do this again.
Yeah.
We might have to revolt again. And so we can't
that day might be sooner than you think, you know, hey.
Yeah, right.
And it's stuff going on.
Yeah, I know, and it's sort of, but, so I'll admit that I didn't always understand that, and I didn't always support gun rights, and I was one of those people who thought maybe that was, the Constitution was out of date, or that it didn't have, because I didn't understand it. I didn't know anything about it at all. And I still can't say that I'm an expert, which is why we talked to Stewart Rhodes, because he is, and we want to know more about it ourselves, plus we want our audience to be able to know more about it and get to a point where they understand why we have a Second Amendment, why we have a First Amendment. These are the kinds of things that Stewart Rhodes understands very well because he's researched it and he's studied it and he's written about it and he's, you know, got books. He's writing a book about it. And so, you know, he's a very, very smart guy. But I felt moted a couple times too because he was like, he corrected me on a few things. With the Waco thing, I said the Department of Homeland Security, and he said, "Oh, they weren't around back then." And I was like, "Oh, I knew that."
Snap.
I was like, "Oh, snap! I did know that," and I knew that they came into being after that. because they that was all part of the Patriot Act. So they came in after that, but. You know, I don't know. That was an off-the-cuff question. I didn't need to ask him about Waco.
That's okay.
Yeah, so we were intimidated by him.
Oh, no.
He was so, yeah. So that's why we interview these people, okay? Because we're not experts on all the things that we want to know about. We want our audience to know about. That's why we have these people on. So.
Definitely. But you know what? You did know a lot about the Waco thing, and going back, like how you were admitting about, maybe you were kind of ignorant about the gun situation. I was very ignorant about that because I remember when that came on or when that happened, and then they made the made for TV movie.
Yeah.
With this dude that was on from Wings or some TV show, Tim something, I think he played him, and I remember watching the TV movie, and they just made him out to be crazy, and just like, that was in my head. Oh, they just killed him because they're crazy. I never took the whole situation into account and how crazy it was that they killed him the way that they did, And now, I have remorse and I feel bad that, I was a kid when that happened, but still, I was, I wish, now I can look back and see like how they demonized this guy.
Yeah.
Actually, he wasn't a demon at all, just trying to protect themselves, and then all the children that got killed, and I don't know, when I listen to that, I get like really upset and full, and it's devastating,
Yeah, this was this is something that, I may want to do a show on in the future, because there's a whole kind of...
On Waco?
Yeah, because I think some of these things that we talk about, and I know the Oath Keepers, they take a neutral stance on these kinds of things like 9/11, and so this isn't, his reflection of anything that Oath Keepers believe are, but we've done shows on 9/11, and we've done shows on Oklahoma City, and some of these things that we've come to believe are false flag operations or staged events. And there are some people who think that is also the case with the Waco incident. And, it's something I'd like to research. It's something I'd like to investigate. And I think one of the things why we talk about these things and why it's important to understand these things is because these sort of set the way for all these things that Stewart Rhodes was talking about, these sort of violations of the Constitution. These events, whether they, were terrorist attacks, real terrorist attacks, or real threats to humanity, or they were staged events, that's, they set the way for what, the Patriot Act and the NDAA and these things that are taking away our rights of the Constitution. So, or I don't really even know that they are taking them away, because it seems to me that they're just illegal. These laws, these executive orders and these laws and things, I think if they're violations of the Bill of Rights, can't we just, like, fight those and just say no? That's kind of the point of the Oath Keepers, right? It's like they can just say no, like, we're not going to obey that, and then they actually are right in doing that, because these laws are unconstitutional. So, whatever.
Yeah, it's just really creepy, but like we said earlier, it's really glad. I'm really glad. I know you're really glad too that there are people like Stewart Rhodes out there trying to appeal to people. And he also said something really awesome when he was just like, when I approach people, I automatically assume that they're like an upright citizen, or that their intentions are good. Basically, I'm paraphrasing. Yeah. That's not exactly what he said, but something to that effect. He doesn't look down on people. He doesn't, approach them with the fact that they're stupid and ignorant and they don't know what they're doing. Right. He tries to educate them and get them to understand, which is, I guess with all the stuff that we're exploring, it's a really good way to approach people. Even though sometimes you get these crazies. Oops, I'm calling names already, right? You get these people on Facebook, or you get people that attack you.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard to be calm and try and educate them,
Right.
But I also am beginning to believe that there are just some people that don't want to wake up.
Yeah.
And I just have to move on and just really focus on the people that seem at least open to it,
Right. Yeah, no, it's true. And I think what context he was bringing that up in, too, is we were talking about the Occupy Wall Street thing, and how you can just easily do that with the cops as well, is just start to call them names. And he says, we've obviously seen, and he talks about it too, is how they're just overstepping their bounds, pepper spraying kids that were just sitting down. Those kids were strapped. They were sitting down, and they were actually handcuffed.
Yes.
So they weren't doing. How could they do anything? They couldn't. How could that guy have threat in any way? There's no way. So he just pepper sprayed them. So obviously that was just him being a dick.
Yeah, he just pepper sprayed them like they were bugs, just like walking up and like they were like a flower. Like flowers or something.
That guy was just a jerk. I mean, he didn't have any reason at all. He just did it. And so we see that happen, and it's real easy to say, you know what, I hate cops. Cops are terrible. I hate them all. But if you approach, I thought he said, you approach somebody as if they are an oath keeper. You approach the cop and say, I believe that they're an oath keeper. He says they tend to become what you think they are. Yeah. And so that was really cool, and I think that that's true. It's like self-fulfilling prophecy, you know. If you think that someone's a jerk, then they'll act like a jerk to you. Yeah. If you have a prejudgment, anytime you prejudge somebody, or, you know, he sounded like he was very good at just, I don't know, taking a person, you know, at face value and not just, you know, leaping to conclusions about them. And so, and then just knowing that even if they are, you know, kind of overstepping their bounds, maybe they just don't even know any better. Maybe they just weren't even taught. You know, they take an oath to the Constitution, but they never even read it. Yeah.
Oh, please. How many people? I've read pieces of the Constitution. I'm working on getting educated about it little by little, but I don't really know anybody that's read the Constitution. You know.
Well, I think Stewart Rhodes has. We know somebody has read it.
I mean, okay, yeah.
Okay. Front to back.
Yeah, one person, you know.
Yeah, so he's,
you know, but
and a good guy and a decent guy, and certainly somebody that you know, we're just big fans of that work. Because I remember a long time ago when you and I were sort of going through this awakening process, and we were talking about these things, and you said, I mean, I have this idea. I want to try and reach out to, you know, the military and the police. And I said, oh, you know, and that's where I told you about the oath keepers. Yeah. It's like, oh, and then, well, there's a group kind of like that already. And you're like, there is. And so we were talking.
I remember that.
Yeah. Like, we were talking about them for weeks. We were like, oh, the oath keepers. And then, you know, we were so impressed with that. And then when we finally got in touch with Stewart Rhodes to be on the show, it was like, oh, really? He's, you know, sort of starstruck. Like he's a celebrity, you know. But he is. I guess he is. You know, he probably gets recognized in places. He said he was on Bill O'Reilly's show. Ugh.
We just said that at the same time. We were like, ugh. Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. Bill O'Reilly doesn't deserve him. Bill O'Reilly does not deserve Stewart Rhodes, because he would, you know, he sat there and told him, "Oh, that's going to be total anarchy." Shut up.
You're going to eat a banana, dude. Just something.
Just get out of here.
Get out of here.
He's so annoying, but I guess he's really rich. I don't know.
well, yeah, that doesn't make him less annoying though.
But I'm saying, a lot of people must listen to him and watch his show because how is he so popular? Or is he so famous?
Yeah, well,
and he makes so much. He's got such a big salary, so just being a jerk like apparently works for him because he's got, you know. And that's a good way for Stewart Rhodes. I mean, I don't, you know, if Bill O'Reilly asked me to be on his show, I'd do it too, just because you want to get the exposure, you want to get the word out there. But
I guess
yeah, I do it. You know,
you do it. Yeah, I guess I'd do it too. I wouldn't be like no, but still, I don't. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't enjoy it. How about that?
I'd enjoy just being like, you know, I don't know, just whatever he asked me, I just being contrary with him, you know.
Yeah, and just pull out facts and stuff, because there have definitely been people that have been on there that's just like made him look like that's fun, you know, especially if they're coming about you in a condescending manner, you know.
Right. Yeah, which I'm sure he would, but he does that too. I mean, he can do that to Stewart Rhodes, who obviously is smarter than him and knows way more about, you know, and he sits there and be condescending to him. It's like telling him, it's going to be total anarchy if everybody did that, if everybody just
silly.
How can anybody follow the Constitution? That's a crazy idea. It's like, shut up,
dude. Just eat a banana.
Yeah, like, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Like, who was that? It was I saw an interview when he was on David Letterman, and I forgot what he said. And David Letterman was like, he said something just that was just ignorant. And David Letterman was like, yeah, you're putting. He goes, no, he accused David Letterman of saying something that he didn't say, and David Letterman was like, oh, you're putting artificial. You're putting words in my mouth just like you're putting artificial facts in your head. I was like, oh, I have to use that. Snap.
Right.
Letterman, you know. And I guess they're friends. They've known each other for a while, but I don't know. Yeah.
Right.
You know, a lot of anchor people, I'm not saying that they're not smart, you know, they're smart in some areas, but then they don't know everything. And I think a lot of people, some people, they get into a position where they've been around for such a long time and they're just basically reporting, you know, reporting. They're not even researching thoroughly or, you know, and they assume that they know everybody. They want to be the star of the show and they want to assume that they know more than these people that have been studying the area of interest for years. That's just like...
Right.
It is. Yeah,
yeah, totally. O'Reilly, he seems to me like I don't know, but he seems to be very narcissistic. Like he wants to be the top dog no matter what it is.
Yeah.
That just seems to be his personality because he's been caught even off camera being like that. Remember that rant? I think it was funny.
What was that? What is that? The Rickroll rant, right? The Rickroll rant?
Well, someone put a Rickroll on it, but it was not originally a Rickroll rant. But yes,
I remember that. It's funny. And
yeah, he's just like that was. I mean, he really did that. He was like, "We're going live." What? And he's just like cursing. He's like, "Forget it. I'll do it live. I'll do it live." You know.
Yeah.
And he just went crazy, and so somebody put a Rickroll on it to make it look like he was ranting because he got Rickrolled.
Yeah, but I saw the real rant. But I first saw the Rickroll rant, and then I saw
the real
rant afterwards. And they both were equally as funny.
Yeah, he's Bill O'Reilly. Yeah, so he's anyway. That was interesting. I didn't know Stewart Rhodes had been on Bill O'Reilly's show, but. I mean, good that we're getting information out there about those keepers, and that he's coming out there and he's talking about this stuff, and he's so. I guess since this will be our election show, and we're going to be airing this on the day of the election, that November 2nd. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what you guys want to do as far as voting. I'm not going to tell anybody how to vote, but you heard what Stewart Rhodes said. We asked him about it. It's like, I don't feel good about voting for someone that I consider to be the lesser of two evils. I you know, and when they're the same.
Yeah. I always, and I fight, you know, about that. And people say, oh, I'm voting for Obama because, well, at least he's the lesser of two evils. I'm like, that's acceptable to you?
Right.
I just don't. I don't vote either. I'm done. We should have I'm not going to vote party. You know, and then you get those people. I know I get those people that are like, well, if you don't vote, then you don't get to say anything. You don't get to criticize. I'm like, fuck you, dude. Like, I'm still, like, you're going to put tape on my mouth? I'm going to still talk. Like, I still pay taxes. How about that? I get to criticize because I still pay taxes, you know?
George Carlin has a great rant about that because he says, well, you're the one who voted for the douchebag, you know? So, I mean, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean? I get the right to complain because I didn't vote for him. You're the one who voted for him. So, I don't know. I mean, I think that he brought up a good point, you know, on your local level, you can do things and you can make a difference, but in these big elections, as George Carlin put, I mean, it's a charade, it's an illusion of choice. They're not really giving us any kind of choice at all. And to say that Obama's a lesser of two evil, that's debatable because Romney hasn't even been in office yet, so he hasn't even shown that he's fully evil. Yeah, he's a rich, preppy dude. Looks like he's a puppet of mass proportions. He doesn't seem to have an opinion in his head that lasts for longer than 10 seconds. And he, you know, but he hasn't gone and killed American citizens as far as I can tell, although he would have supported the NRA. So, you know, who knows what's going to happen. I think that's highly debatable. If you want to, you know, vote for Coke or Pepsi, it's up to you, you know. But, I mean, or McDonald's or Burger King, you know, you're going to get sick either way, let me just tell you. They're both poison inside. And so that's, you know, that's the way I feel about that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So I may go ahead, though, because I do want to vote on the local level for the GMO labeling. I think that's really important.
For the laws.
Yeah.
For the local stuff. But as far as the presidency,
I'm not voting for a representative. It's just, ugh.
Yeah. I don't know, I need to start doing I'm researching and looking into a lot of stuff, but one thing too about different types of governments and, how the government, I know bits and pieces, but, you really got to do some research to figure out how governments work and how, I don't know, I don't really know. I wish I had an idea of what the solution would be for the future, but at this point, this isn't working.
Yeah.
So, and then I've got those people that I'm just like, oh, I don't vote. They're like, or, I don't agree with the system as it stands now. They're like, well, what's your solution? Well, if you don't have a solution, you should shut up. I'm like, you fucking dude.
Yeah.
I'm like, just because you realize something isn't working, you can still vocalize about it. Doesn't mean you have a solution right away.
Right.
No,
yeah, and it's true because one of the things that Stewart Rhodes pointed out, too, was that, the Constitution, it's good. It's like the best we've ever seen. But we know that there are flaws, but it is still pretty good and still pretty much the best we've ever seen. So it's kind of like it's what we have. It's the best thing that we have right now to protect us. And without it, things would be way worse. So, but, is it, this voting process, this voting system, this form of government that we have is obviously corrupt because we go every year around this merry-go-round of the same people and the same parties and blah, 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 blah. So this representation. And then as we saw with the bill in California, then we talked to Dawn, and she was saying with the AB 2109, the vaccine mandate bill, that they went ahead and passed. She was saying how she talked to the representatives and they're just kind of like, yeah, whatever. We know they pass unconstitutional bills all the time. And they just don't even care. These are the people that are elected representatives. They just don't even care. Assembly people, assemblymen and women in the state of California. And I'm sure all over. I'm not saying it's just in California, but that's the example that we had. And, so I don't know. Whatever. It's just, it's very disheartening, and I don't know what the system is. Everybody has an idea. Some people say, we should have total and utter anarchy and have no form of government at all. But I've worked in small groups in college and things where we've had to organize, a speech or something together. And I'll tell you, it almost happens naturally that someone takes leadership role and somebody, because if you don't, then nothing ever gets done.
Well, but you know what, also, too, I'm just getting sick and tired of people waiting for somebody to lead them, too.
Right.
I don't know what the balance is between, because, really, in my head, toying with this idea of do we need leadership, because I also think people get lazy, and then they don't want to, do things for themselves, and that's how I think that we're in a lot of this mess in the first place, too.
Right.
Because people aren't taking charge of their own. They're not owning their stuff, basically.
Exactly. That's true.
So, and I think that we are more powerful than we're led to believe, and we've been totally disempowered. And I'd like to see every individual take back their power, some level, just to... Yeah, but just not to wait for somebody. That's the thing I think with voting too. I think for presidency, I think a lot of people are very, they're just waiting for the right dude to come along and sit back.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
and just
Right, and that's not. Yeah, it's up to us really, and and if you have freedoms and you have the rights to do then you have these people as representatives. If you're living under a republic, then the whole thing of freedom is that then you're going to have to make choices. You're going to have to make decisions. You're going to have to do these things. You're going to have to be a little more self-sufficient.
Yeah.
And you want your freedom. You want it. But then some people, I wonder if they really do. Because they kind of, they seem like you're saying it's kind of like laziness. Like I'd rather have somebody else just tell me what to do. But...
Yeah.
And
some people don't want to work that hard. Some people don't want to take responsibility too. But I think also too, once you wake up and you kind of get idea of like the world and bigger picture of how things work, and you wake up, you also start to have to take responsibility for your personal life too.
Right.
I think if you're really going to be real with yourself, if you're going to be, you have to take responsibility on that level. And I think that there aren't, it's well, I should say, it's hard for some people to do.
Right.
Yeah,
it is. So, well, on that note, we're going to go ahead and close out the show. We're out of time here. But we want to thank once again Stewart Rhodes. That was awesome. And we're really glad to have him on the show. I hope he comes back in the future and we can talk more about things whenever. I'm sure that there will be a lot of things to come to talk about because this thing is just starting. This erosion of the Constitution.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to just keep doing it. So we'll have more to talk about with him in the future, unfortunately. But that's definitely something we'll have to keep on top of. And so we thank him, and the website is oathkeepers.org. Get involved, print up your pamphlets. You can join even if you're not military or police. You can become an oath keeper by association. And we are Truth or Talk. You can find us at truthertees.com, our store at shop.truthertees.com. We thank you for listening, and till next time with peace, truth, and love.
Peace, truth, and love, you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
We can meet our destiny to build a land here that will be for all mankind a shining city on a hill.
You're listening to the Liberty Brothers Radio Show, only on Revolution Radio. Now, here are your hosts, Jim White and Jason Van Tatenhove.
The crusade for freedom is your chance and mine to fight communism.
Please hang up and try again.
Oathkeepers.org. Honor your oath.
Speaking of training, Stewart, and that'll segue into my next question. You mentioned it earlier, the Jade Helm 15 exercises. You have, I'm sure, high-level contacts, and you have people that probably are still serving or have served and have contacts. I don't necessarily need you to blow any operational security, of course, but do you have any thoughts on Jade Helm? We've heard everything from it's a harmless exercise to it's going to be taking out people on the red list and everything in between. Do you have any thought on that? The seriousness of it?
I think the best place to start is with facts. So here are some critical facts, like the elephant in the room no one wants to look at. Fact number one, this is just barely a year since Bundy Ranch. Okay? And at Bundy Ranch, what did you have? You had a very close call for a shooting war between current serving, including some contractor guys who had just gotten out of SF. Dan Love was SF. And I know from talking to an SF sniper here in the Flathead Valley that he had other teammates that were there. So you had well-trained, military-trained snipers on the BLM side. Across from them, looking back at them through their scopes, were military veterans who were just as well-trained, if not better trained. You had Scout Sniper Marines, MARSOC Marines, Navy SEALs, Special Forces veterans, a whole bunch of Marine infantry vets, Army Airborne. They were all on the other side. And all we were taking is one shot. One negligent discharge would have been enough, probably. Just like Lexington Green, we might never have known who did it, but it would have been on. So this is the reality. You had a very close call of a massive firefight there in the desert, which would have sparked, I think, a civil war in this country. Luckily, that didn't happen. That's a fact. You can't just brush it under the rug. It was only a year ago. And so, and the Obama administration, Eric Holder, Barack Obama, Harry Reid, all got a black eye. They backed down in a very public way to those cowboys on horseback, backed up by veterans. They backed down and blinked. So I think they're probably not too happy about that and would like to correct that. That's fact number one. So fact number two, at Bundy Ranch, we found out later from the Washington Times that there was the consideration of military strike. The Obama administration did consider using military force at Bundy Ranch, but chose not to. That's a fact. Now, why I think they chose not to? I think they realized that this is, the crap storm they're about to unleash if they did that. And I think part of their equation is the fact that the guys who were there in the desert at Bundy Ranch, a lot of them just gotten out. They're not a whole lot different than a lot of the same guys that are still in. You know, the guys from their units are of the same mindset. So I think they're concerned about the loyalty of their own troops if they take the glove off and go full on iron fist. So I think that's a fact number two, is that we came very close to them using military force, and that again would have sparked a civil war. Third fact, there was a DOD memo that was also disclosed right after Bundy Ranch. The DOD memo written in 2010 authorizes the use of military force upon the request of almost any public official, whether state or military, or state or federal, to any local military commander. Very low threshold for the use of military force domestically. And it's all about domestic. It says in it, it's one of the reasons why it could be used, whenever a local or state government either fails or refuses to assist the federal government in protecting its property or its interests. So I found that very interesting. They're contemplating a possible nullification scenario where a constitutional sheriff or a state governor or legislature says, hey, we're not going to help you enforce that crap in our state. I think they're contemplating that. It's right there in the memo. So, and look at who was at the DOD back then, Jay Johnson. What is Jay Johnson doing now? He was lead counsel for the Department of Defense when this was being written. Jay Johnson is now in charge of DHS. So that's another fact for you. So you add on these facts of just very recent history, and to them you can add, of course, the fact of the NDAA with the provisions that assert the power of the president to use military force, detention, and military trial against anyone, including U.S. citizens. That's a fact. So, and then you can add on to that the practice of President Obama of having a kill list where he's assassinated American citizens overseas. But the assertion of power is not confined to overseas. It also applies here at home. That's another fact. So you have all of these facts, and then you can say, well, you know, how do you know that the Special Operations Forces would ever dare to pull the trigger on Americans? Well, they almost did at Bundy Ranch, some of them. We also now know from Chris Kyle that there were, in fact, some snipers. He was at Katrina and shot people at Katrina. And, Jim, you may recall in Kalispell, a meeting where we had a recently retired Special Forces sniper pop into the meeting and say, yeah, he had been in Katrina and done the same thing. Remember that?
I do remember that. I got the first part of it, but he asked me to turn off the video recorder when he was bringing that up. But, yes, I do remember that. You're correct. He said they would shoot people. There'd be guys that were having their way with women, and he would shoot them in the head. That's what he said.
Right. So you can say, well, they were dirtbags and deserved it, and that might be true, but this is the problem, folks, is you've got the U.S. military being used domestically and military-trained snipers, so they will drop the hammer if they see you as a dirtbag. That same sniper veteran, in fact, texted another veteran down at Bundy Ranch, local Army vet from Kalispell, and he said, you're on the wrong side. Bundy's a dirtbag and deserves whatever he gets. You need to get out of there. This is your final warning. That was his text. I read it on the phone with this veteran. So, you know, there you go. And this is the same guy told me that his teammates are down there. So they will do it. If they think you are a sufficient dirtbag, because they've been conditioned to think that, they will point their rifles at you and they will drop the hammer. And we can go back to Waco. Delta Force was there, and we know that General Boykin, when he was in Delta Force, personally advised Janet Reno on how to handle that standoff. So he didn't say, I won't do that because it's a violation of my oath. He went to D.C. with another officer in Delta, sat down with Janet Reno, and personally advised her on what gas to use and how to conduct the operation. Now, I'm not saying that every guy in SF is a bad guy. Hardly. I know a lot of good ones. There are some within Oath Keepers. I've trained with recent Army Reserve Special Forces. I've trained with guys who just got out of SF. One of my founding board members was Rex McTeer, retired SF Major. There are some serious patriots in Special Operations Forces. We also have plenty of Navy SEALs in Oath Keepers as well. They're good people. But there are some who will do it. They'll do it either when they're current serving, because they've been
conditioned to think that you're some kind of evil enemy of the Republic, or they'll do it as contractors. They will do it. There's some that will. And so what's the answer to that? I think the answer is what we saw at Bunny Ranch. There's no way they're going to have enough guys who will do it, either as misguided current serving military or as hireling mercenaries. There's not enough of them to do it, and they'll have to call out the standing army, the big army and the Marine Corps, if you are organized. The best way to counteract any attempt to do some kind of a snatch and grab, decapitation strike on the freedom movement or tyrannize people into submission, the best way to counter that is with a very organized community. There's just not enough of them. And this goes right back to Lexington Green. General Gage could not just send out a handful of officers, hand-picked officers, to go and arrest John Hancock and Sam Adams. He had to send a friggin' regiment because of the militia. That's why, because there was an organized community standing around those leaders defending them. So that's why he had to pull the gloves off and go full bore and use the standing army against the people. And all that did is tick off more people. They didn't run and hide like the British officers thought that they would and cower from the fight. Instead, it caused a galvanization. They laid siege to Boston and eventually drove the British out of Boston. And that's how the war was kicked off. So I think it's critically important for us to be willing to recognize the unfortunate bad truth that there are some who will drop the hammer on us, but also recognize there are plenty of good guys in the military. And I think Jade Helm was in part conditioning and a vetting of the military to see who will and will not go along. I think it's very likely that you're going to see scenarios shift from supposedly being for practice for overseas. All of a sudden it'll be, today we're going to go take down a compound of skinheads or whatever, least favorable people they can name domestically, and get the guys to go along with it and see who does and doesn't go along. I think it's also conditioning and an assessment and vetting of the local politicians. Who raises questions? Who has any serious, meaningful questions about what we're doing in this exercise? They put their name down. I think that they're figuring out who is loyal and who's not loyal and who's likely to go along with the town councils and county commissioners as well. And I think it's also in part intimidation. It's meant to condition the public, those who are not awake and aware. It's just conditioning for them. This is no big deal. This is normal. But for us, those who are awake, I think it's an attempt to intimidate us and say, look, resistance is futile. If you dare to oppose us, this is what will happen. Navy SEALs and Delta Force will come get you. It's like the boogeyman. But once again, there's just not enough of them, presuming all of them even followed the orders, which is not a foregone conclusion. So, I think our best response is to recognize that, to do our part to wake up the current serving that are involved to the manipulations going on and to, like I said, the facts. It's not conspiracy theory to point out everything I pointed out a minute ago. This is all fact. So in that context, back when in the 80s when I was a young paratrooper, if we'd have had exercise like this, I probably wouldn't have blinked. Be like, okay, we're getting ready to go invade Afghanistan or something, So we're getting ready to go and fight for the new Shadim, right? And train them is what we were doing back then. But now, there's been a lot of water under the bridge ever since. This is a different world we're in. We have a government that has made it very clear it considers veterans and gun owners and anybody who's a constitutionalist to be the future enemy. In fact, add two more facts on. That Colonel Benson from Leavenworth, what did he write about in his paper as the future domestic enemy? It was the Tea Party, right? The hypothetical was all about a Tea Party/militia takeover of local town councils and government and how they had to fight back with military force, with the U.S. military coming in. And that was not some low player. This was a guy who was an instructor at the school at Fort Leavenworth where officers go to further their careers. Here's a guy conditioning people. Other fact is also at Leavenworth is where they train these human terrain specialists whose job it is to bring in like anthropologists from the public sector and they integrate them with the military. Their job is to go in and do an assessment of the mindset of the population. And they've used them in Afghanistan, and you can bet they're part of Jade Helm here at home. Their job is to go in, and probably doing it right now, when they go in and brief these town councils and county commissioners, I'll bet you there's a human terrain specialist sitting right there watching this is part of their assessment of where the people are, the mindset of the population. So you can count on that. And their final exercise at Fort Leavenworth, when they train these human terrain specialists, is a hypothetical of a succession of